Welcome to this IGotAnOffer case interview basics video, where I'll cover everything you need to get started with case interviews. First, I'll briefly discuss a few case interview examples to give you a sense of what they are. Second, I'll talk about the acceptance rates at top consulting firms such as McKinsey, BCG, and Bain. And finally, you should watch until the end of the video because I will share one very important fact that you need to understand to be successful at case interviews. At IGotAnOffer, we've helped more than 20,000 candidates prepare for case interviews so far, and more than 80% of people who train with us end up getting an offer. This case interview guide summarizes a lot of what we've learned in the process of doing this, so let's get started. The first thing that you're probably wondering about is, what are case interviews? Well, case interviews are used by top consulting firms such as McKinsey in their recruiting process to decide which job applicant they should hire. Case interviews last around 30 to 45 minutes, and candidates are asked to solve a business problem. These problems are usually inspired from past consulting projects that interviewers have actually worked on themselves. The objective of case interviews is to recreate the conditions consultants face in real projects, and therefore assess how well candidates would perform on that job. Case interviews have been used since McKinsey was created back in 1926 and are definitely here to stay. So let me give you a few examples of case interviews you could come across in the recruiting process. As I said before, interviews are often inspired from past projects. So a first hypothetical example could be working for Coca-Cola, whose profits have been declining in recent years. The candidate could be asked to help to find the root cause of the profit decline and to turn the situation around. Another example could be Nike. You could imagine, for instance, that the company wants to launch a new line of sneakers in Europe. And as a candidate, you could be asked to advise the CEO on what new product to launch. Okay, so now that you know what case interviews are used for, let me tell you about the intensity of the competition to get into top consulting firms. Case interviews are notoriously hard to crack. Every year, around 200,000 people apply for McKinsey, but only 2,000 of them get a job offer, according to Dominic Barton, the firm's managing director. That's a less than 1% success rate. Therefore, it's actually easier to get into Harvard University, which has a 5% acceptance rate. Now, this might sound a little intimidating at this stage, but don't worry. Over the course of this video, as well as in the rest of this guide, I'll break down how to prepare to be a part of this 1%. There are around 26,000 employees at McKinsey at the time of recording this video. So if the firm hires around 2,200 every year, that means that it also replaces about 8% of its staff every year. So if we assume for a second that staff turnover at other consulting firms is similar to that at McKinsey, we estimate that top consulting firms hire around 6,000 people every year. The biggest recruiters in the industry are therefore McKinsey, BCG, and Bain, followed by a long tail of smaller players. Looking at things from this perspective is somewhat comforting. Indeed, if you manage to break into consulting, there's a 30% chance you'll end up at McKinsey. So now you have a sense of the intensity of the competition to get into consulting, let's turn our attention towards what successful candidates do to land a job at top firms. In our experience, the first step to beat the odds and get an offer in consulting is to understand what skills they're actually looking for. Once you understand what these skills are, you can then signal you possess them in your interviews. Luckily, top firms are all looking for more or less the same skills. If you take a look at McKinsey and Bain's websites, for instance, you'll notice that although they describe the skills differently, they are essentially all looking for the same attributes. For example, McKinsey and Bain both talk about problem-solving skills. And what they mean by that is that you need to have shown strong intellectual abilities at university and/or work. Secondly, McKinsey talks about looking for personal impact, while Bain talks about looking for results delivery. What they both mean here is that you need to have shown a strong commitment to achieving results in all projects you've undertaken. Basically, whatever you do it to the best of your abilities. Thirdly, the two firms respectively talk about entrepreneurial drive and passion. This essentially means that they want to hire people who have shown in the past that they can take initiative and start innovative projects. Finally, both McKinsey and Bain clearly mention that they want to hire people with proven leadership abilities. In other words, people who have shown that they can lead teams. It's important to keep these 4 skills in mind because consulting firms will grade you along these dimensions at every step of their recruiting process. and typically top firms usually use 4 tools to make their assessment. The first step of this recruiting process is the resume and cover letter screening. During this step, the consulting firms will analyze whether you are showing promising signs across all 4 dimensions they care about. If you do, they'll invite you to take a maths and logic test. For instance, McKinsey uses the McKinsey problem-solving test and BCG uses the BCG potential test. Not all firms have tests, but most of them do. The objective of this step is to analyze whether you meet the minimum threshold in problem-solving skills. If you pass that second hurdle, you'll be invited to interviews. During these interviews, you'll need to answer 2 types of questions: case interview questions and behavioral interview questions. As mentioned previously, case interview questions test your ability to solve tough business problems that your interviewer might have come across in the past. But they also start testing how you behave and whether you're really striving for great results in how you approach the problem you're given. Finally, your interviewers will also ask you behavioral interview questions such as, tell me about a time that you led a team, or tell me about a time that you had a strong personal impact on a situation. These questions aim at testing your personal impact, entrepreneurship, and leadership skills. So now that you know what skills you'll need to demonstrate during the recruiting process, let's turn our attention to how exactly consulting firms make their hiring decision. As you probably guessed by now, the process is lengthy. First, your resume needs to be selected, and then you need to succeed at a maths and logic test. And once that's done, you'll usually have to go through 2 rounds of interviews. Both rounds of interviews will involve case questions and behavioral interview questions. And in each round of interviews, you'll also meet between 2 to 5 interviewers. So in total, you'll have about 5 to 10 interviews before even getting an offer. So the candidates who prepare with us often ask if the second round of interviews is different to the first one. The answer is it's not in terms of format, but the people interviewing you will be different. Now, first-round interviewers are typically junior or senior managers with around 3 to 5 years of experience, but the second round of interviewers are usually partners of the firm and therefore much more senior. At the end of the process, all the interviewers get into a room and make a decision about your application. Now, partners are typically more outspoken than managers, and therefore your performance in the second round will end up being more important than in the first. Okay, so that's it for case interview basics today. If you have any questions about the case interviews, don't hesitate to ask them below, and our team will answer them. So the next thing you need to do is watch our video on case interview questions, where I will share our approach on how to consistently crack cases. This is the approach candidates preparing with us use, and 80% of them end up getting an offer so far. Right, that's it for today, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.